Hey guys, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to create our first level for our simple game. We're going to be moving, rotating, scaling, and snapping objects together. We're going to place some coins, some walls, some enemies throughout our level, and also a goal that the player has to get to once they've collected and avoided all of the enemies. So to do this, we're going to be taking everything we've learned throughout the 101 course once again and applying it to laying out our level. So what I would like to do first is I want to create the ground that our player is going to be standing on. So I'm going to right click in my hierarchy here and I'm going to create a 3D object and I want to create a plane object. Just a flat shape there, just a flat object. And I'm going to position it at 0, 0, 0. Now if I look at this, we can see that since our player is on the grid, on the ground, by default, positioning the plane at 0 means it is right below where the player is standing. Now to make sure of this, if I select it and I hold down Shift and Control, it gives me the surface snap tool and I'm snapped directly to the plane surface. Cool. Now this ground is not big enough, obviously, so we want to scale this up. Something maybe like 5 on the X and then 5 on the Z. And what I want to do is just kind of drag this up because we're going to be moving forward, not backwards necessarily. The goal is going to be back here, and our coins are going to be spread out in a level through here with enemies and whatnot. So position it at about 15 on the Z would be fine, on the Z axis there. Now in the game view, the camera sees this. You can't really even see the plane because of the angle we're looking at it. So what I want to do is grab this camera, I want to drag it up on the y-axis, and we start to see the plane revealed there. And what I can in fact do is grab the rotation tool and along the x-axis just rotate it looking down. And that's what we see. We see our player here and we see the ground. Now we're going to need materials obviously to separate the object so we can see, because clearly the white on white's not working, but we'll get to that here in a second. Now I'll call the plane ground. And now what I want to do is I want to create some walls. I want to create some walls that kind of encase our level here so we can't run out and fall off the map. So to do this, I will create a 3D object and I will create a cube object. Once again here, double click on it to find where it's at. It's way down here below our ground. So let's just bring this up to 0.5, 0, 0. Now it's right where our player is. And what I want to do is I want to drag this off to the left using the move tool. Just off to the left till we see about where we want the walls to be. Right about there would be good. So we'll do about -10 going off to the left. Now this isn't much of a wall, right? It's simply just a cube. It's not going to stop the player from getting over there. So what I want to do is just scale it along the Z-axis. Just grab the Z-axis scale and just scale it about here. Now, I don't know exactly how big these walls need to be for this. Maybe something you tweak for your game specifically. But in my case, we'll say along the Z-axis, we'll make it about 50. And what I want to do again is position it just like that. Now, this matches the length of our ground, as you can see there. So position it at 15 on the Z-axis. And now I want to scale it up on the Y-axis so it's a taller wall, so we can't just jump over it, right? So if I grab this, first of all, let's call it a cube or a wall. Change it from cube to wall. If I have it selected on the y-axis for the scale, we can say something like 5. Now it's 2.5 units going below the plane, 2.5 units going above the plane because of the center of the cube being right here. So I can fix that by either offsetting the position based on this, which would be 2.5, or I can just grab my surface snap tool again and just snap it to the surface, and you'll see that it is in fact 2.5 and set that back to be 15. Now there is one wall. Now let's create the other wall by having it selected and hitting Control D. That will duplicate the object, and I'll simply drag it over to the other side of my player. And I know this one will be 10 on the x-axis while this one is -10. So we have 20 units in between of space, or at least 19 units because we're going from the center of the cube to the center of the cube. So I can use that to know how wide the wall needs to be to cap off the end of this level. Now, the reason this is so important that we're doing precise numbers is because you do not want to have a mess of a level and have to come in and make a change. It just gets to be crazy if you have stuff offset a bit. It would drive you crazy. So just make sure you get it really organized, really clean and precise so you have no problems in the future. Now to cap off these walls, I'll hit Control D. And what I'm going to do is there's a couple ways I can do this. I want to just drag this out to the center. So I drag it out to the center. We'll place it at 0 on the x-axis. And I know I could just rotate this around and cap off the wall that way, or I could just scale it about the x-axis here. And the way I want to do it is I'll scale it about the x-axis. If we do it 20, it'll go into the center of the walls. So if we do it 19, it'll go right up against the walls and be really nice and snug. And what I can do for this is I can just drag this out, try to match the edge of the walls there. But what we'll notice is that it looks kind of weird, right? Having this weird corner here. So what I can in fact do is instead of making it 19 and even 20 goes into half of the cubes there, what I could do is make it 21. Go the full width of the cubes. So we have the kind of snugged up against the edge of the wall. And then with that, I can hold down V to grab my vertex snapping tool, grab this vertex, and snap it to that vertex. So now we're nice and snug with no seams. Very nice. If you look in the game view, this is what we see. Pretty cool, right? Looks kind of like what we showed in the first lesson. Maybe a little bigger, I'm not really sure. I don't know what the scales and the sizes were before, but this should be fine. Now my camera's at a weird position here. If I were to move this up on the y-axis to about 5, and just kind of bring it in on the z-axis a bit here, looks pretty good. Maybe a bit higher on the y, 7.5. And then I could rotate it a bit on the x-axis here to look down at our player. Something like 40, -8, and 7.5. It looks pretty good. Now, you see I have all these wall objects here, wall 1, wall 2. What I want to do, in fact, is I want to create an empty object, which is an object that has no components other than a transform component. I want to use that to kind of organize my hierarchy here. So if I take all these walls, I could drag them into that object, and then this object will contain all the walls. But first of all, I want to make sure this object is at 0, 0, 0. So the coordinates within the object and the object itself will be directly related to the world coordinates, right? So if it's at 0, 0, 0 here, that's where the 0, 0, 0 is in my world. So it won't change anything about the positions of the walls. So I'll just hold down Shift and select all of these and drag them into my new object here. And I'll just take this and I'll call it walls. Now I can collapse this and we have an organized hierarchy here with our wall objects all in one. I can move them all together. Back at 0. Now to get some color going on here, I want to go inside my materials folder and I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call this material player. And our player is going to be, let's make him blue for now. I may change this later on. And I'll just drag this and drop it on my player. Hold down Control and hit D, duplicate that material. I will call this ground. And I don't really know what colors we're going to use for this stuff, so we'll just make the ground a cool green color. And then again, duplicate that. And I'll call this wall. And our walls can be what color? Let's say a similar color to our ground, maybe. Something like that. Just drag and drop it on each one. Look in the game view. This is what you get. Now, while I'm in here, I want to create an enemy material for our enemies. I will just make it a bad color. You know, they're red. And then I want to create a coin material, so the color of our coins. Now, they're going to be a bright yellow color. Instead of just being yellow, though, they're going to also be emitting a light, so they don't require a light source to be visible. And we'll make some changes to this as we go and as we have a coin out here. And we may make some changes to this material depending on what it looks like in our environment. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's create a coin object by creating a 3D object. And we'll create a cube again here. And I'll call it coin. Position it to that 0.5, 0, 0. Now this coin is in fact not going to be the size of our player. We'll make it half the size, so 0.5 on the scale. Just drag it out here so we can see it. There it is. That's a coin. That's what we have to collect. Drag the coin material, drop it on the player or on the coin there. That looks good. That's a fine color. And in fact, I don't like the color of the walls, but you could do absolutely anything with this you wanted to. So the colors are completely up to you. Let's say this coin is going to be way out here. We have to collect it. It's way out here somewhere. That's going to be at 20 on the z-axis and still 0.5 on the y. And again, I will create an empty object, and I will call it coins. 0, 0, 0. Take coin, add it to coins. Now the reason we'll do this is because later on you'll have a lot of coins per level perhaps, and you want to make sure you have an organization system going on so you don't have to worry about doing something with every coin. You just have it all under one object. Now let's create our enemy object. It's going to be a cube. Enemy. 0.5, 0. Now enemies can be, as you saw in the first lesson, they can be any shape you want them to be. You want them to be long obstacles, you want them to be round, you want them to be capsules, whatever you want them to be. They can be whatever you want, as long as they're designed the same way when it comes to the component we're going to be writing. But that's for a later lesson. So enemy is going to be red. Got a bunch of interesting color choices going on here. And we can position him right here at 10 on the Z. And as you saw, he can be scaled on the X to be 19, so he fits right inside the walls here. And we can make him move up and down. Or in fact, you can make him move up, back, down, and then up, back, down. The waypoint system can allow you to do anything like that. So it's pretty cool. Just go from A to B to C to D, and then back to C, back to B, back to A. Just waypoints like that. Pretty cool. And we're going to do that here in a few lessons from now. And again, we'll create an empty object called enemies and place 0, 0, 0 and place the enemy directly in there. 0.5, 10. And the last thing we have to do is create the goal that we have to get back to once we collect the coin. Now, keep in mind, your goal can be anywhere in your level. It can be after the coin up here. It can be different per level. You can have it in the corner. You can have it down here. But in my case, I'm going to have the goal back here. You have to go get the coin and then come back. So I'll create a object, drag it out of the child there. Did not mean to have it selected as an enemy. And I will call it goal. Now, goal is going to be positioned at 0 in that for now. What I want to do for goal is create a new material. It's going to be a slightly transparent material. So Control D, and then I will say goal. And you can see how cool and easy it is to keep these organized as long as you start early by organizing by names and positions and all that. It makes everything really easy to position and lay out. So goal is going to be a different green color, but in fact, it's going to be a transparent object. So make sure you select transparent on the rendering mode. And then with that, just bring the alpha value down so you can see through it. Not required, just kind of fun to do. So now we have the see-through object that we can position wherever we want the goal to be. I think it should be back here at -10. Again, you can see how that number, the way that we have it laid out, makes it really easy. That's at 10, that's at 20, this is -10, this is 0. And then on the scale for the X will be 19, so it fits snugly inside of this wall. In fact, I would like it to be more snugly inside. So what I could do is grab the vertex snap tool and just snap it directly to the bottom of the wall there. And if you wanted to, you can make this also a bit taller, maybe 3, and then snap it again, V, snap. That way you can accidentally jump over the goal and fall off into the infinite below. And I believe that is all we have to have for our level layouts. Now, every level that we create will have a similar structure. It'll have, enemies, coins, and a goal. It just depends on how you set it up. So the last thing I want to do is make this look kind of nice. So I want to go to my main camera, and I don't want to use skybox for this. We're using an art style that doesn't really work well with a skybox, at least when it's included. So I'm going to go to solid color. And I want to make the solid color match the tops of my my walls here. So if I grab the camera and we zoom out a bit, so if I just grab this and go up the Z-axis, we can get an idea of what this is going to look like if we are far away here. And one thing I could do, if I wanted the walls to be wider like they were in the first lesson, I could take these two walls here, and with the scale on the x-axis, I could set it up to be like 25. And then with each one selected, I can hold down the vertex snap tool and snap it to the bottom of the goal. So we have a wider wall, but it's in the exact same position. There we go. See how easy that is to do? Pretty cool. Now we have these wide walls. Now, one thing you're probably noticing is the shadow that we have here. It gets cut off before we can see the end of the shadow. And since we know that our levels are going to be about this size, it doesn't make much sense to have that. We're not going to have that many shadows anyway. It's not going to be a lot of graphical quality stuff to be rendering, so it's not that big of a deal. So what I can do is if I go up to Edit, Project Settings, and I go over to Quality, this is where we can decide what settings have what. So if we were to use the very low quality setting for our game, these are the quality settings. And you could do this, like in a settings menu, an option menu where they select what quality level they want to play at. This is where you can kind of decide what that means. So we'll be using probably like very high for this, maybe even ultra. But for very high, what I want to do is make sure that the shadow distance is just high enough so we can see all the shadows. Right, so we'll just set it at like 100. Like I said, this is not going to hurt anything when it comes to performance, simply because of what little we have going on here. And the last thing I want to do is I want to kind of adjust this lighting so that we can see the level a bit better. So one thing you'll notice is it is a directional light, which means it does not matter where it is positioned. It simply acts as a sun from that direction. So if I were to re-angle the sun, you'll get a different light angle, right? So you can kind of just play around with this and get it kind of what you want. In my case, I don't really know what I would like it to be. That's fine anyway. And we can also change the color of this light if we want to get a different mood going on in our game. Pretty cool. That's going to be it for this lesson, guys. My name is Austin, and I will see you in the next one.